Hello everybody and welcome to Insider's Guide. Today we're discussing one of the best ski resorts in Canada, Banff Sunshine Village. Sunshine Village is one of the most well-balanced ski resorts out there, offering something for pretty much everyone. In this video, we'll be discussing what you need to know to make the most out of your Sunshine Village visit. With it being one of the largest resorts in the Canadian Rockies, Sunshine Village has a lot to talk about, so this episode will be divided into two longer parts. For this video, we'll go over some background information and cover the Gondola and Goat's Eye areas, also known as the Lower Mountain. We'll work through the rest of the mountain in the next part. So with that, let's begin. An Insider's Guide to Ski Resorts, Sunshine Village. Sunshine Village is located in Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada, and is relatively straightforward to get to. If you're flying in from out of town, Calgary is definitely the recommended city to fly into. From there, take Highway 1, the Trans-Canada, all the way into the town of Banff. From there, it's another 20-ish minutes before you get to the parking lot. The best way to experience Sunshine Village is to, of course, stay at its mid-mountain hotel located at the top terminal of the gondola. For most, however, the most economical option is to stay in the town of Banff. The public shuttle system in Banff is very good, with bus rides that lead to and from the resort. For those with a car, Sunshine offers one large parking lot by the base of the gondola. However, this gets filled up very fast, so be sure to get here early. Sunshine Village, along with sister resorts Lake Louise and Mount Norquay, are known as Ski Big 3. All of these mountains are accessible through one lift ticket and have 5 to 7 days of access on the Icon Pass based on which plan you purchase. Norquay is more of a low-key townhill with some cool advanced options off its North American chair. Lake Louise is the most expert-oriented of the three, but still offers decent options for beginners and intermediates. Sunshine Village has a bit of everything and is known for its iconic Delirium Dive. Norquay, Sunshine Village, and the town of Banff are pretty close to each other, while Lake Louise is a bit separated. In general, the Ski Big 3 resorts receive lighter and drier snow than their British Columbia neighbors. However, they tend to receive less in terms of overall quantity. Sunshine Village receives the most accumulation out of the Ski Big 3 resorts, and snow quality here just seems to be a bit better than at neighboring Louise and Norquay. While Sunshine seems to get the bulk of its terrain open very early on, the two exceptions are its two freeride zones, Delirium Dive and the Wild West. Speaking of which, Sunshine's double black runs are split into two categories, freeride and non-freeride. The freeride double blacks require you to carry avalanche gear and ski with a partner, while the non-freeride double blacks have no such restrictions. Like neighboring Lake Louise, much of Sunshine Village's single black terrain is improperly rated, with some of those trails being comparable to its non-freeride double blacks. While Sunshine's footprint isn't as rocky as nearby Lake Louise, expect some pretty nasty sharks in the early season on its advanced and expert runs. Sunshine Village can be divided into three primary zones: Goat's Eye, Mount Standish, and Lookout Mountain. All three of these areas have their own dedicated map. The trail map for Sunshine Village is not the most intuitive to understand until you actually get to the resort. Each individual map is adequate, but understanding the overall layout of the mountain is very confusing. In addition, there are parts of the maps that are not to scale and just plain confusing. Besides this, getting around Sunshine Village is actually relatively straightforward. The mountain has a very distinct layout that is generally quite conducive to good crowd flow and easy navigation, minus a few exceptions. The only downside with its more horizontal profile is that Sunshine Village doesn't have the longest lappable runs in the world. While crowds are slightly worse than at neighboring Lake Louise and Mount Norquay, in general, Sunshine Village doesn't get that busy, so I won't have too much to say about that in this episode. Sunshine Village sits at a much lower elevation than most of the destination resorts in the western US. Those prone to altitude sickness shouldn't have many issues skiing here. Finally, note that any run on the trail map with the dotted line is the easiest way down in the pod. Now, with all that background information out of the way, let's dive into the mountain itself. At the beginning of the day, all Sunshine Village guests are required to ride this really long 6-person gondola to get higher up on the mountain. You can imagine where this is going, but the gondola is the main choke point at the resort. During my visit, I waited around 5 minutes for the gondola, but I went during an off-peak weekday. I've heard this line can reach upwards of 20 to 30 minutes on really busy days. Until Sunshine starts implementing their master plan, which we'll save for another video, my best recommendation is to get here early. Once you're past this initial lift, you can expect relatively milder lines elsewhere as people start to spread out across Sunshine's sizable footprint. The gondola rises a couple hundred feet before making a 90-degree left turn up this narrow canyon. The gondola passes through one mid-station near the Goat's Eye and Wolverine pods before reaching its top terminal. Unlike most ski resorts, Sunshine Village's mountain village is located all the way at the top terminal of the gondola rather than at the base. I'm mixed about this setup. On one hand, everything is super close to each other and stopping for a break is really easy. On the other hand, going back to your car midday is very impractical for obvious reasons. You're also able to unload and load at either the mid or top station and go in either direction, which makes transferring between Goatsai and the village really easy. Even though it generates a long line and is an annoyingly long 25-minute ride, I think the gondola is overall a fine setup. Just make sure to get here as early as possible to beat the lines and leave nothing important in your car. If you want to optimize your day, know that most people ride the gondola all the way up to Mountain Village, ski all the terrain there first, and then ride down to Goatsai after lunch. Skiing Goatsai first and then making your way to the rest of the mountain is the best way to beat the crowds. While it doesn't really act as a terrain pod itself, the gondola does service a handful of long runs that lead down to the base. The green Banff Avenue Trail is a bizarre one. It actually starts at around the top terminal of the gondola and is exceptionally flat. It then requires you to ride up the fixed grip Jackrabbit Quad, which is something I've never heard about at any other North American ski resort. It then continues from the top of the Jackrabbit Quad, where it becomes a decent cruiser. Once it passes the Goatsai base, it becomes a flat road again, all the way back down to the base. If you're coming from anywhere on the Goatsai pod, you can take the relatively hidden Cayuse Creek Connector Trail to merge onto Banff Avenue. Alternatively, at the bottom of the Jackrabbit Lift, you can take this Upper Canyon Trail, which allows you to bypass riding up the Jackrabbit Quad. Upper Canyon itself is a little gully that merges onto this Powerline Trail. Powerline can be accessed from the Coral Cutoff Trail from the Wawa pod and is a narrow run down through the trees that leads all the way down to the bottom of the Wolverine pod. I do not recommend Powerline or the Banff Avenue past the Goatsai area to beginners since they get quite narrow and icy. There are definitely much better areas on the mountain to learn. From Wolverine, you can either ride it up to get back to Banff Avenue or continue down Middle and Lower Canyon, which I believe are never groomed. Beeline is a little shot that allows you to skip one of the flatter parts of Banff Avenue. For most people, I'd recommend just downloading the gondola at the end of the day, but for those who want to ski down to the base, the Banff Avenue Trail is the one I recommend since it has the best coverage of these lower mountain trails. However, I don't recommend doing these runs any more than once at the end of the day since their lower elevation creates marginal conditions. Going back to my point earlier, this is why Sunshine Village doesn't have the longest runs and why top to bottoms are impractical until the end of the day. Now let's shift up towards the gondola's mid-station. There are two pods here, Goatsai and Wolverine. Most of Sunshine's footprint is above treeline, which makes it very susceptible to harsh elements. The Wolverine pod is the exception, being entirely below treeline. While its terrain is pretty vanilla, on stormy days, this is the place to be. On normal days, I wouldn't really recommend spending too much time here, as there's far more unique terrain elsewhere. This pod is also good in that there's really terrain for everyone barring experts, although I would say that the single black terrain here is a bit overrated difficulty-wise. The Wolverine lift services decently long runs, while the Jackrabbit lift offers shorter trails. We'll start with Wolverine and then talk about Jackrabbit. This pod is probably the most confusing part of the trail map since there are runs going in every direction, so I'll do my best to walk you through it. From the Goatsai mid-station of the gondola, you'll have to take this short, unmarked green trail to reach the Wolverine lift. As mentioned earlier, this part of Banff Avenue is a really fun green cruiser, although it's definitely on the steeper side for a green. This Forget-Me-Not trail is a lot flatter, so I wouldn't recommend it over Banff Avenue. Christmas Tree allows you to bypass a flat section of Forget-Me-Not. Both Bluebell and Trappers are decent, but it's not long before you merge onto the flat Forget-Me-Not, so I avoid them. Roller Coaster is a narrow little intermediate run through the trees that's a fun alternative to the bottom part of Banff Avenue. Juniper allows you to return to the Wolverine pod from Banff Avenue. Goat Chicken Gully is the first of several bizarre and memorable trail names we'll see at Sunshine Village. Contrary to its name, this run isn't really much of a gully, and I believe it has rotational grooming, but don't quote me on this. Wolverine Lift Line is exactly what it sounds, and it's pretty much always bumped up. Wolverine is the signature run in this pod. Its single black upper section is typically ungroomed, while its blue lower section is usually groomed. Kids Play is accessed from Banff Avenue and has two paths. The skier's right path allows you to bypass the black rated part of Wolverine and only ski the blue portion. The skier's left path leads you back to the Jackrabbit lift. The skier's right path is pretty flat, so try to gain some speed. Tower 30 is a short glade run that often holds some decent stashes. We already talked about Upper Canyon, so we'll move on to the Jackrabbit pod. To reiterate, these runs are exceptionally short. Honestly, the Jackrabbit lift serves more as a useful connector lift than as its own pod. Think FIS at Ajax, if you know you know. Upper Canyon is very flat at the top, so this lift is really only here to provide a less painful alternative to get down to the Goat's Eye area. I believe that Short and Sweet is always groomed and that Jackrabbit and Fireweed are on rotational grooming, but don't quote me on any of this. The grooming all across Sunshine Village varies from day to day. Muskrat's is exceptionally flat at the top, but it primarily serves as a means of getting to the TP Town Luxury Express, which we'll talk about more in Part B. Larch Glade allows you to return to Jackrabbit. Cotain Trail takes you from the bottom of TP Town LX to Jackrabbit. Finally, we get to the Goat's Eye Pod. This is one of my favorite areas at Sunshine Village, as it's home to some really iconic groomers, great trees, and easily lappable chutes. With Goat's Eye, we'll move from Looker's left to right and finish off with the first of 2 legendary freeride zones at the resort. Sunshine Coast is one of the most scenic runs at Sunshine Village. Although it's on the mellower side, the views it offers of the surrounding mountains are absolutely breathtaking. The rest of the intermediate cruisers on this side of Goat's Eye, Stampeder's Way, Raptor, and Eagle, are all steeper than Sunshine Coast and a lot of fun. Hell's Kitchen is easily the toughest non-freeride terrain at Sunshine Village. It's a very tight and steep glade run with several different paths. In general, I find that the terrain here gets tougher the further you are from the lift. If it's been a low snow year, there's a small cliff band that can appear in the middle of the run. I don't recommend Hell's Kitchen during such conditions. Otherwise, this is a great run, one of the best on Goat's Eye. Just treat it with respect and ski it with a partner. Note that there is a decently narrow and lengthy traverse to get back to the Goat's Eye lift from this area. Supermodel is essentially the lift line of Goat's Eye, and the snow here tends to be pretty trash, so I avoid it. Freefall is one of the steepest mogul runs I've seen. Think Deep Temerity steep, if you know, you know. It does start off pretty mellow, and although it doesn't really maintain its pitch, the middle section is ultra steep for a tree cut run. This run is another victim of some pretty bad snow, so I generally avoid it, but it is worth checking out if you're into very steep bumps. Goatsucker and Goat Chicken Glades are pretty much the same tree area right next to Freefall. They're very steep for single blacks, so I'd only recommend them to experts. I believe Skydive, Fall Line, Glade Runner, and Rolling Thunder are all on rotational grooming, but it changes season to season and month to month, so be sure to check the grooming report before you go. All of these are steeper than your average advanced cruiser, but are all very enjoyable. Afterburner, on the other hand, is pretty much always bumped up. Sasquatch is the lower half of Afterburner. Both Chicken and Sergey's Shortcut are 2 cuts through the trees. The Big Woody is a solid tree area that can hold some stashes when conditions are good. Scapegoat starts out as a really fun cruiser, but then becomes a road that lets you bail out of these advanced trails. Wildfire is a steeper alternative to the lower part of Sunshine Coast and is almost always groomed. Moving back up to the top of Goat's Eye, Cleavage is a must-do run for all advanced skiers. This local's favorite is one of a few proper boulder-defined single black diamond chutes out there. You First, Mother-in-Law, and Goat's Head Soup are some really nice advanced runs that start in the Alpine and filter down into some really widely spaced tree terrain. These runs are great places to start before trying out the Southside chutes. Speaking of which, the Southside chutes are the most popular non-freeride terrain at Sunshine Village. There are 2 ways of accessing the Southside chutes: the standard access road and the Spoot Pack. We'll talk about the road first. I believe you can access every Southside chute from this access road, although both Renegade and Stampede require some additional sidestepping to reach. The walking track allows you to access the upper sections of both Farside and Think Again. The top part of Farside is very wide open, while the top part of Think Again is initially wide open, but it filters into a series of tighter chutes. In general, the Southside chutes get harder and less popular from Looker's left to right. Even though it's a bit of a hassle, I would recommend traversing as far as you're willing to go. That being said, all of the Southside chutes are on the mellower side, and are honestly easier than some of Sunshine's single black terrain found on Mount Standish. They're more wide open than you'd think, and not all that steep. I would, however, recommend avoiding this zone in the early season, as the zone's unfavorable aspect leads to some of the most sharky conditions that I've experienced. During these times, the entrances into these runs can be very challenging. When I skied Farside in January 2023, the entrance had a mandatory 10-foot drop-in, which is pretty uncommon during better seasons. Shifting gears, the hike is steep and time-consuming, but worth it if there's been a recent dump, though I wouldn't really recommend lapping it. The upper part of Think Again is pretty unique and definitely my favorite place to drop in along this hike. All of the Southside chutes filter into a few different runs. You can follow this little cut that leads to the lower half of Sunshine Coast. You can also ski Eagle Glades, which hold some of the best stashes of snow at the resort. This zone's double black rating confuses me though, as it's at best single black. The final, and my personal favorite option, is this Eagle Creek Trail. Eagle Creek, like the name implies, is a really fun run through a creek. This is one of the most unique trails at Sunshine and is a great way to finish a lap down the south side chutes. Finally, let's talk about the Wild West terrain, the first of 2 designated freeride zones at Sunshine Village. The Wild West terrain is the gnarliest at Sunshine Village. As we'll see in Part B, like Delirium Dive, the Wild West is depicted pretty poorly on the trail map as it doesn't give you a good sense of what this zone entails. This picture, provided by the resort, will helpfully clarify what this zone actually looks like in person. First off, to access this terrain, you'll have to ski Sunshine Coast all the way to its outermost edge to find the gated entrance. The gate will only open if it recognizes a beacon. As you saw in the photo, the top part of Wild West is mellow, but it then filters into a series of 4 very steep couloirs. Wheelers, the couloir furthest skiers right, is the easiest given how wide open it is. While it's still much harder than most terrain at the resort, it's a pretty good place to start in the Wild West. Peytos is just skiers left of Wheelers and is much narrower and steeper. Peytos doesn't really require any mandatory air other than in low snow years when the entrance is rock riddled. However, you can always traverse a bit lower down and enter from there. This is another good place in the zone to start if you're confident. These 2 chutes are about all that open on typical snow years. The remaining 2 runs, Anglers and Luxtons, require a ton of snow to fill in. Speaking of which, Anglers is the locals' favorite here but should only be attempted if you're experienced. It starts off pretty mellow but requires a 10-foot exit air that can be tricky to land unless it's been a good snow year. Luxtons is the final couloir and is so steep and tight you have to see it to believe it. Search up any video of this couloir on YouTube and you'll immediately understand why it's so infrequently skied, even by locals. It's so tight that you're either pretty much forced to billy goat or straight line, either option being extremely dangerous. Be careful not to traverse more skiers left than Anglers, as you'll be entering a permanently closed zone known as the Cane Cliffs. All the Wild West terrain filters down to some playful tree terrain which leads to Banff Avenue. From here, you'll have to ride all the way down to the base, right up to the Gondola's mid-station, then up Goat's Eye to lap this terrain. I highly recommend the Wild West terrain if it's open during your visit and you're experienced, but please try to find a local if it's your first time. Well, that's about it for the lower mountain. Go check out Part B now, all about the upper mountain. As always, please leave any questions down below. Thank you all so much for watching. All my love, I'm out.